with Dr. Mohamed El-Erian, sought after for his insights to global and financial markets. He is also keenly aware of how diversity brings better decisions and outcomes in the workplace. Thank you for being here, Dr. El-Erian.
Thank you.
I listened to your talk at our CREF conference about 18 months ago, and I was struck by a story you tell when you were leading PIMCO right at the time of the financial crisis, and it was a key point of what was going to happen with Lehman. Would you share with us that story and what you learned from that experience?
It was the weekend before Lehman collapsed, and we were all gathered like many others in a room trying to figure out what was going to happen. And we had three possible scenarios on the whiteboard. Scenario one was the most probable one. We gave it an 80% probability that Lehman would be saved. 6 months earlier, Bear Stearns had had issues. JP Morgan had bought Bear Stearns, and a crisis was avoided. We had a second scenario that Lehman would fail, but fail in an orderly fashion. We gave that 15% probability. And then we had a third scenario that Lehman would fail and fail in a disorderly fashion. We gave it a 5% probability. That's what actually happened. So our predictions were completely wrong. But we had made the effort of gathering people from very different parts of the firm to figure out what would we do in each of these scenarios. So when the least likely scenario occurred, we had a plan. And we were able to move way before anybody else, and that's why the history books say that PIMCO predicted the crisis because it navigated it so well. No, we didn't predict it. We just had a plan for different scenarios. And that's only possible if you are surrounded by people who think differently than you, who can ask the what-if questions differently from you. Otherwise, what we would have done if we were a normal firm, we would have said the 80% probability is the most likely, let's focus all our attention there. And then we would have gotten it wrong on multiple fronts.
How have you seen diversity and inclusion? In this, you explained the scenario, it helped you prepare for anything that might happen. On a regular day-to-day basis, how do you see that impacting organizations that may not be able to see the sight lines bringing others in?
So I think the science is very clear on both in terms of good news and bad news. The good news is if you get to be more diverse and more inclusive, you will do better. I mean, the numbers are incredibly compelling. Merit-based diversity and inclusion initiatives result in healthier firms. I mean, for me, the science is so compelling. And the underlying that is the fact that we are very easily held hostage by unconscious biases. We fall victim to blind spots. If you are among similar people, you will reframe things the way that talks to your comfort zone. So unless you have this diversity and unless people feel included, you're going to make mistakes. The bad news is getting there is really hard. You have to start earlier and earlier in the process to ensure that you get there. And it's not something that you do in 1 year, it's something that you do over multiple years, and you have to be really committed to it.
So I often say we have to be purposeful and accountable. Do you believe that we're making progress as an industry in making diversity and truly being inclusive? Or do you think we're making progress, or as you said, it's going to take time? Do you think there's some things we should be doing that we're not?
I think it's really slow. It's very, very slow. And I don't think people realize, leaders in particular, realize how much they have to think about this. Let me give you a simple example. I think of myself as very open-minded about this issue. When my daughter was 10, she took a summer course on science and math. She loved it. The following year, I asked her, what do you want to do? She said, ancient civilization. I said, but you enjoyed your science and math. Why don't you do the second course? She said, no, Dad, you're originally from Egypt. I want to do ancient civilization. I want to get to know more about ancient Egypt. And I went away feeling really comfortable, and I signed her up for that. A few days later, that whole story didn't make sense to me the more I thought about it. So I went back and said to her, why did you do this? What's your real reason? She said, Dad, last year I was the only girl in class. I asked the question, where are there more girls than boys? They told me ancient civilization. So that, her decision was imposed on her by the reality of we don't get diversity and inclusion at an early age. Me as her father didn't realize that we were falling into this trap. Right? And that for me was a stark reminder of how hard this is. Leaders in particular have to be committed to this. They have to measure. Measurement is hard, but they have to measure. And they have to lead by example. And unless you do that, these efforts tend to peter out. And I think that's why progress isn't as much as it could be, or we should hope for.
Right. That story about your daughter reminds us all that we have to be aware way back when our kids are in school to make sure that we're asking the right questions. If you hadn't had that follow-up question with your daughter, you would never have known.
But I made a lot of mistakes, and I've learned. I'll give you another example, which is one of the most embarrassing moments as a CEO. I had once a month a brown bag lunch where people would come in. The understanding was this was a safe zone. And I would always end the meeting by going around the table and say, tell me something that I should know that I don't know. And it was understood that what was said in that room stays in that room and there's no repercussion. One of our best performing women said, you almost ruined my life. And I stopped and I said, I'm really sorry, how did I do that? And she said, do you remember when our competitor up north was having difficulties? And their assets were going to be on the move. And this was a massive opportunity for us. I said, yes. And she said, remember what you asked for? I said, yeah, I used a very blunt management tool. I know how busy everybody else is with their day-to-day work. So I asked for a daily update as to what we did that day to capture the business that was on the move. And she said, that's absolutely right. Do you remember what time you asked for? Now, I used to start my day at 2:45 a.m. That's when the alarm clock went off because I'm on the West Coast. I would be in the office by 4, which is 7 a.m. in New York. It's not that bad. By 9 o'clock, it's lunchtime. And financial markets sort of have a lull. And I had asked for it for 9 o'clock. But I said to her, no, I don't remember. When did I ask for it? She said 9 o'clock. I said, okay. And she said, you know what happens when the CEO asks for a memo in a global firm? I go, no, what happens? She says, the people writing the memo need an hour to compile everything. So the conference call has to finish by 8, which means that the conference call for your memo was at 7:30. Do you know what a single mom is trying to do at 7:30?
Get our kids ready for school.
And I said, I am so sorry. That is completely my blind spot. Okay? I didn't realize that, and I should have. I'm sorry. But let me ask you, why didn't you raise it? You know that I'm pretty sensible. You know that it doesn't matter whether I got that memo at 9 a.m. or at noon. And you know what she said? I didn't want to be viewed as not being a team player. So we identified 2 problems right there. Okay? And I would encourage people that when you're trying to get somewhere, which is hard, create a safe zone where people can come and share with you things, and you'd be surprised to what you learn.
Well, and you ask the right questions, and I think that's a really amazing leadership quality, is not just to hear from the employee, but then to ask more questions so you could continue to learn and make sure the environment changed to a way where it was accommodating for all. I have one last question, Mohamed, and it's about mPower, which is MBA's initiative to promote opportunities for women in our industry. What advice do you have for women in real estate finance?
So I think examples are very important. I think that stories are very important. Sharing stories about, yes, it's hard, but it can be done. I'll tell you at different levels. I think senior women leaders have a responsibility to other women to help them, because they have experienced all these unconscious biases. There's conscious bias as well, but there's unconscious bias, right? And it's really hard to deal with unconscious bias, and they've experienced it, and the mentoring is really critical. And I think on the younger side is what I tell my daughter, okay? There's no reason why you shouldn't have the same set of opportunities as somebody else. If you're well prepared, there's no reason why. And if you feel you don't, raise the issue. Because like me, you may well find that example I gave you, you may well find that leaders are surprised. Okay? And I'll give you one final example that is not a gender-based, but is culture-based. We were in a promotion meeting, and there was this colleague of ours in Japan that had performed exceptional. But his communication skills in English weren't that good. So the decision among the top leadership was to hold that person back 1 year, pay them, give them ability to improve their communication skills, but withhold the most important thing to them, which was public recognition. And we were about to make that decision when, thankfully, one person said, so let me get this right. He's in Japan, working with our Japanese clients in Japanese. And we're going to hold him back because of his English? How good is our Japanese? And there was a moment of, oh my God.
That is a great story.
And so I tell the younger people, speak up, because all the dinosaurs like me will end up discovering that we're making mistakes, and we don't want to make mistakes. But if you don't speak up, we'll continue making mistakes. So for the older it's about mentoring and opening up opportunities. And for the younger ones, is speak out, because a lot of the time these unconscious biases are actually harmful to the firm. And if you can identify them, you can remove them.
Well, that is great advice. Thank you so much for spending time with us, for your insights, and for your leadership.
Thank you.